Welcome, everybody. I'm JLo, or Jonathan Logan, and I'm just here to help with the slides and queue up some of the videos. We have a quick housekeeping note. So we're recording this video. All the guests are muted just to minimize sound. If you don't wish to be seen on video, please turn off your camera. The chat function is directed solely to the moderator. I'm hosting as moderator today, so you can send your questions to me. We will have a Q&A period after the speakers conclude, provided there's time. And if you wish to ask a question, again, please just send the questions to me directly. And I will get to as many questions as possible. And John will be the person asking the questions. To optimize your view of this presentation, you can go to the top right corner of your Zoom screen and select the speaker view. All right. Our first speaker is going to be Emma.
Thank you. Okay, I'm just going to do a really quick introduction for myself. So my name is Emma, and I'm happy to be here, but also very unhappy to be here because obviously the situation is not ideal. But just a little background info about me is that I'm 18 years old, and I currently live in Los Angeles, California, and I'm studying environmental policy and planning at the University of California, Davis. And I will pass it on to my lovely co-host, Rodri.
Yeah, damn straight. Thank you, Emma. That was a very nice slide, isn't it? Like, we're obviously all happy to be here, but ideally we'd be doing other things, isn't it? I don't know, gardening or going to the pub, isn't it? But alas, we're here on this Zoom call, fretting about a burning planet. Yeah, I'm Rodri. I'm 23. I'm from this country called Wales. I hope all of you know it. If you don't, please look it up. It's just next to England in the United Kingdom. And yeah, it's an absolute honor to be here and to host these these youth on fire, these legends that are putting themselves in harm's way and, you know, standing up for what's right while the rest of us sleepwalk into the burning inferno. So yeah, I will pass it on to Emma to give a little background about the event.
Perfect, thank you. I'm just going to read a section of the Youth on Fire vision statement to kind of serve as an intro to the event. We are gathering because we have been let down by older generations. For 50 years, our parents and grandparents have known the risks of pumping CO2 into the atmosphere. Instead of fighting for us and future generations, they ignored the growing horror, leaving our generation to fight for our very survival and everything we have, or risk suffering civilizational collapse, wars, starvation, the death of hundreds of millions, and possibly human annihilation in our lifetimes. So it's important that we now take matters into our own hands, and that's why having a youth-led event with amazing youth speakers is so important, hence this event being a thing. And I will hand it back over to Rodri to introduce our first speaker.
So our first speaker will be Zach Lumley from Ireland. Zach is an undergraduate biologist and eco-socialist activist from Cork. He's worked with Scientist Rebellion, Animal Rebellion Ireland, and the International Marxist Tendency. He likes civil disobedience, plants, and is hoping not to starve to death. So strap yourself in, guys. Over to Zach.
Cheers. Thank you very much for the intro. So essentially what I'm going to be doing is giving a short roundup of the science so that you're all up to date with the latest news. I think it's always really important to familiarize ourselves with what is going on so we can accurately communicate to others, but also to remind us of why we're doing these things. So I'm going to share my screen because I've got a few slides. And I guess just a note, if anybody has epilepsy, there might be some like flashing colors. So, okay, is that visible? Great. Okay, so this is a Canadian town, or rather was a Canadian town, where 250 people used to live. It became famous in June for breaking Canada's all-time record for high temperatures 3 days in a row. and on the fourth day, it was completely burnt to the ground by wildfires. This is happening across North America, obviously. Lytton is not a rare example. The world is on fire. This is a house in California where a total of 5,566 fires have been recorded so far this summer. The US has seen 2 million acres of land burn. So for those of you in the UK, this is the size of the area burned so far if it was transposed over London. Alongside wildfires, crops in the US are starting to fail, and the Western drought has lasted longer than the Dust Bowl of 1930s did. Reservoirs are dropping. Here's Siberia, also on fire. The blazes are so bad that zombie fires or holdover fires can burrow into the rich material below the surface, such as the peatlands, allowing huge stores of carbon that were previously locked away to be released. Greece is on fire. This is what Athenians went to sleep to on Thursday night. And here are people being evacuated from wildfires in a completely dystopian video. Turkey is on fire. And a heating atmosphere is essentially like an enlarging sponge. So it can take up more water, causing prolonged droughts, and then it all comes down, causing devastating floods. These are the floods in Western Europe this summer, where hundreds have died. In China, people were trapped in subways due to rapid flooding. And freak flooding also happened in New Zealand. Worst of all, though, is the situation in Madagascar right now. Climate crisis-induced drought means that 1.2 million people are food insecure, and that's 400,000 in a critical situation of famine. Think about every single person that you've met over the course of your life. Imagine them in famine situations. How many times do you have to multiply every person you've met in your life in order to get to 400,000 people? And this is just 1.2 degrees of global heating. And I've only shown you a tiny selection of thousands of disasters across the world that have happened just this summer. At 1.2 degrees, we have uncontrollable wildfires, droughts, and subsequent famine, flooding, Category 7 hurricanes. And I haven't even started to talk about the ecological collapse and destruction. Do you remember the mass extinction that wiped out the non-avian dinosaurs? Modern extinction rates are 20 to 100 times faster than during that. This is like, as far as wildlife is concerned, it's about 100 asteroids all hitting at the same time. In Australia, 19 out of 20 ecosystems are collapsing. Insect biomass is crashing with in the last 30 years in protected areas. 40% of insect species are expected to go extinct within the next decades. And obviously this will have hugely profound consequences for all life, because 75% of our crops are partially dependent on pollinators. It's so bad that the mass loss of life and displacement, to quote an article from January, the scale of the threats to the biosphere and all of its life forms, including humanity, is so great that it is difficult to grasp for well-informed experts. And we haven't even felt the full impacts of the greenhouse gas emissions that we've put into our atmosphere yet. There is a delay. Even if we stopped burning fossil fuels or emitting any greenhouse gases, heating will continue for centuries. So I'll just go on to talk a little bit more, having shown you those graphics. As I mentioned, we're at 1.2 degrees. Island nations call for 1.5 to stay alive. In 2009, at the G77, Lumumba Diaping said that the new climate draft tying warming to 2 degrees was, quote, certain death for Africa. Through a mixture of ignorance and deliberate lying, we hear people talking about plans to limit warming to 1.5 degrees and 2 degrees. But even if every country kept its climate agreements, we're still headed for a minimum of 3 degrees. And considering that nearly every environmental, political, and social promise we've ever been made by the ruling class has been broken, I think a more likely scenario is +5 degrees or +6 degrees. Between 1 and 2 degrees is an extremely crucial point because we're in the danger zone at which irreversible climate tipping points could be triggered. Some of them lie between 1 and 2 degrees. Already, scientists are shocked at how tipping points and ecological cascades are being triggered. Earlier this year, we saw that the Amazon has switched from sucking in carbon to releasing carbon. And earlier this week, we saw a paper come out that shows the AMOC, or the Atlantic Meridional Overturning Circulation, could completely collapse in a decade. Previously, it was expected to remain stable for centuries. But this is not about protecting rare species anymore. It's not about a Green New Deal, and it's not about, young people being, naive and having this green idealism. What this is about stopping people from excruciating pain of starvation. It's about stopping people being murdered on battlefields fighting over water. And it's about preventing mass rape and indiscriminate violence when societies collapse. If we allow the ruling class to continue to dominate, we have no hope of a future. Many of the people on the call here today will be from wealthy nations where the illusion of a peaceful government can be afforded. However, there are plenty of countries where brutality and repression at the hands of the state is open and unforgiving. Those in power will do anything to stay in power, regardless of the human cost. But there is a glimmer of hope, not to be cheesy, but social tipping points may be faster than climate ones. And there are young people in this call who are waking up, disobeying, agitating, and taking action. And you're lucky to be hearing from them next. So I'll pass it on to the next speaker. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Zach, for all your devotion and all the work that you've done and all the time and effort that you've put into everything. I've had family and friends who have lost their homes to floods and fires, and I live in California. Like I said, so watching the state and other countries burn annually is definitely horrifying. Our next speaker is Orla Murphy, who is a former film student who dropped out of college to go to prison. She has worked with groups such as Fridays for the Future, Polluters Out, Extinction Rebellion Youth Ireland, Extinction Rebellion Ireland, and Global. And before you ask, yes, Orla did try to petition and get emails before throwing paint at a beautiful government building. Here you go, Orla, you have the floor.
Thank you. Yeah, that's a comment I get from older people a lot. That's why I added that to the intro that I wrote. Did you try petitions? Did you try emailing? And I'm like, yes, I did. Yeah, that was my first port of call, not going to prison. So yeah, so a bit about myself, I guess. I'm 20. Like I said there, thanks for the introduction. I dropped out of school to go to prison, which is a very weird concept, but as Zach mentioned there, we're in very weird times. So yeah, I did an action back in March of this year, and that winded me up in prison for 5 weeks. I think that's enough about me, to be honest. I think yeah, I think this call is about the people who are here attending it. It's about inspiring you, and it's about trying to get you to take action, because we've taken action. We will continue to take action. The people here who are speaking, that's guaranteed. We're not going to stop, but we need so many more of us out there on the streets to make any sort of difference. We've seen 26 years of COP negotiations. We've seen, my cutoff date where I will accept that you didn't know about that the leaders of our countries didn't know about the climate crisis is 1954. That's when we saw and we measured that CO2 was going up into the atmosphere, and we realized what was happening. It wasn't being absorbed into the oceans. And we knew there was a problem in 1954, which is a fucking long time ago, to be honest now. And we didn't do anything, and we've continued not to do anything. So the time for denial is over. And a friend said lately that delay is the new denial. So saying 2050, saying we'll do that in 2050, that's the same as denial. That's ignoring an issue and kicking it down the line. That's denial. And we need to snap out of that right now, because people are dying and people are suffering, and we can't afford to do that anymore. So I think a lot of people, I mean, might be shocked by spending 5 weeks in prison, might be shocked by arrests, might be shocked by throwing paint at buildings, might be shocked by a lot of the things people on this call have done, and might be thinking, oh, like, I couldn't possibly do that. Or sometimes I get like, oh, we need more people like you, Orla. But you are a person like me, the people who say that. So that's don't put us on pedestals. We're not here to be put on pedestals. We're not here to be looked at and thought, oh, aren't you great, or stuck on newspapers or whatever. That's not our purpose. Our purpose is to change things, and we can change things without many, many more of us. So I think one thing that I read in a book called Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway, which is very, very appropriate. It's to deal with anxiety in general, but it's very, very appropriate title to do with the climate crisis. Is that you can fear is the belief that you can't handle something. So if you're afraid to go on the streets, if you're afraid to go to a protest, if you're afraid to go to prison, that means that you believe that you can't handle it. Well, first of all, there's so much worse coming down the line. So like, focus on what you can handle. But also we can handle so much more than we think that we can. We're taught that like, oh, you can't change things, or you couldn't do that, or we put all these limitations on ourselves, especially as young people, because we're naive. We don't know enough to be, building movements or talking. Basically, shut up, we shouldn't be talking, we don't know enough. But we should be talking, because we are the ones. If you look at any movement that's ever happened, it's the young people that fill those movements up. We are the bodies on the ground. We are the ones that create the change. And we've always been the people that do that. If you see even like the Fridays for Future strikes, obviously that was young people, but that didn't go anywhere near and far enough. And especially with COVID, it just decimated the whole movement. So we are running out of time every year, every minute. We are coming closer and closer to collapse. And we're seeing it already, as Zach has shown us. So like it may seem like a huge undertaking to try and stop the climate crisis, or what we're doing now is, I mean, the climate crisis is here, it's happening, it's guaranteed to happen. It's probably too late, but every degree that we stop, every point of a degree that we stop from crossing, is less people die, less people suffer, less people starve to death. So that's what we're fighting for. And especially for us people in the global north, I hear like a lot of older people a lot of the time who have been fighting in the movement for a long time and haven't seen the change that they need there. But also a lot of younger people too, who are just absorbing this information and just go into denial and go into desperation. We can't possibly do anything. Maybe that's true, but that us, especially us in the global north, we are the ones, even if we as, individuals, as young people, haven't been the ones who have created all this inequality and have created this system, we have benefited from it, because privilege is built on the backs of exploitation of other people. So maybe you didn't do it yourself, but you're benefiting from people before you that came. And so we don't have the opportunity we don't have the luxury to be desperate. I'm sorry, we just don't. It's not. We have to put obligation above desperation, because we owe this. We owe this fight. We owe these sacrifices because of all that we've done, and people like us and people who are related to us have done to cause this crisis. And so, yes, we need to give them a kick up the arse because they actually did it. But we also need to recognize that we're not to blame either. We are not without guilt either. But don't be lost in the guilt, or don't be lost in the desperation. Just put obligation above it. Know that you have a purpose in this movement, you have a purpose in this world. And that's a great thing to have, especially so young. Like, I have a lot of older people coming to me and saying, oh Jesus, or I couldn't deal with this knowledge, I couldn't deal with fighting this crisis at your age. And yeah, it's hard, because you want to be going to college and you want to be, meeting up with your friends or hanging out with your partner or whatever. But it's also a blessing to have a purpose this young too, and to have a fight to give, and to know where you're going and know what you need to do. And we do. So what you need to do is get your boots on and get on the streets. You need to start organizing. And that's not just, unfortunately, sending emails or signing petitions. We've gone well past that point. It's about creating societal change, and that is a huge thing. And what we need to do, in my belief anyway, is completely undo the system, because it's not working. That's why we haven't seen the change so far. We need to create deliberate democracy. We need to have actual democracy that has people have a say, instead of just these rich bastards who have no idea what's going on in anyone's lives and are old and completely in denial. We need, and deliberate democracy, that comes from people having their say. So that comes from citizens' assemblies, that comes from more localized government. And what that means is those in power have to give up their power, and they don't want to do that, and they're not going to do that willingly. So we need a huge public mandate to create this change. And that doesn't come from voting, for those of us who can vote. That comes from, that has to be something way, way larger, and that comes from mass civil disobedience. So power is the ability to tell people what to do. So disobeying is taking away their power. That's telling them, you can't tell me what to do, I won't obey you. So basically, there's so many different forms of civil disobedience. There's a list of 197 that Jean Sharp, a sociologist, has written. There's so many different opportunities. There's so many different groups. There's so many different people out there that can help you get started if you're not getting started. I haven't gotten started yet. If you need to, up your activism, there's people out there that can help you do that too. I hope that you will do that, because that's what we need. I hope that you'll talk to other people and try and get as many people into this movement as possible, because that's also what we need. And I'm here, literally, my DMs are always open. And I give my contact information however I can. And so, yeah, I hope that you will join us on the streets, and you will join this fight. So thank you.
Fucking straight, Ola. Yeah, I mean, lots of things stood out there. Oh, thank you so much. But yeah, we are people too, and I'm sure, just give it a go. I'm sure it's going to feel a lot better than completing your college course and going into that insecure job for God knows how long, and actually standing up and doing something meaningful, isn't it? Just give it a go, and you've got people here. You've got a support network to do it. And let's halt this impending annihilation, isn't it? As Ola was saying, a 0.1 degree could mean a hell of a lot when we're talking on a global scale. So thank you very much, Ola. We're going to move on to our next speaker, and that's Yad from Poland. Yad is an activist from Poland. For the past 2 years, she's been planning and taking part in non-violent direct actions. She is associated with XR Poland, XR Youth Poland, and the Polish Women's Strike. Last year, she dropped out of college to focus on what's really important. I think we all know what that is. And last but not least, she's a strong believer in the good in people. Damn straight. Take it over, Yad.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, we can hear you, Yad.
Great, thank you. Right. So there will be, if you have to remember only one thing from what I have to say, is I want you to trust yourself. And what I mean about that is to remember the feeling that you felt when Zach was talking at the beginning and was showing us pictures from the world and was talking science. I want you to go back to that moment, or go back to the moment when you first heard about climate change, and remember the feeling that you had when you first realized that you have no future, that our civilization is going to collapse. And now I want you to give in to that feeling and trust that. And I am sure that this feeling is not telling you, go live your life just the normal way, or recycle, or take bus instead of driving your car. I think, and I'm almost certain that this feeling is telling you, take action. And so that's what leadership is about for me. It's about trusting yourself and trusting that what you feel and what you think that you should do at the moment is right. Because everyone thinks something, everyone dreams, and everyone feels like doing something. But there is only few people who really do that and act upon that. And it is the moment when you take something from your head or your heart and make it into reality, and do that step on the street, or throw that paint, or take that shirt off, just as I did during the Polish women's strikes, when I painted my chest in a thunder, which was a symbol of Polish women's strike, and took my shirt off in front of 100,000 people to show them how much I care and to act, to take direct action. That's leadership. So that's why I'm telling you that to be the person you want to be and to be the person that makes change is to really just trust yourself and be true to yourself. Everyone, Zach, Ola, Sergio, Nick, all of us here, we are just people who one day just were really terrified, because that's what we all feel, right? We are not feeling nothing when we hear about climate crisis. We feel despair, we feel sadness, we feel anger towards people who have brought that upon us. And taking those feelings into action, into reality, is what makes us stronger. So I don't want you to do civil disobedience, and I'm not telling you to break the law. But I am sure that if you give it a second, and if you take those words that Zach said at the beginning and those images seriously, then you will want to do that, because that will be the only thing that will give you a sense of, all right, I am fighting for my life. So taking yourself seriously as a person means fighting for your life right now. It doesn't mean going to college, and it doesn't mean just living your life just as it is. But there is one more thing I want to tell you. Trusting yourself, trusting your intuition, and acting on your feelings might not be enough. We are just young people who never really had to deal with saving the world. But there were many people before us who were doing just that. Martin Luther King, Gandhi, suffragettes, Lech Wałęsa. Those are people who had to save their lives and had to fight for their lives. And no, they didn't fight climate crisis, but they were doing just that. And so our duty is to learn from them. And that's the study we should be doing. That's the education we should be taking. I believe that social science and history can be the frame that we can put our emotions and our feelings into. So I have just a couple of names that you could read, or you could just learn from those people. It's of course Chris Hedges, Roger Hallam, Paul and Mark Engler. It's Fidria Popovich, and as Orla mentioned, Ginny Sharp. Yeah, that's it. Trusting yourself and taking your fear seriously and educating yourselves. If I can only add one sentence, I would like to say a few words to all of the women that are here. Orla was saying that it is sometimes very hard to find that power in you and feel like you are enough, just being a young person, just feeling that you can change something because you are only young. And I think that many women have the same thing. I've been struggling with that. I'm just a young girl and I cannot do anything. There are all of those men who are educated and who are older and who really know their things. But it's not true. And we are lucky enough to live in times where sometimes people just want to hear us just because we are young, or because we are women, or we are from some other unrepresented group, from the LGBTQ community, or we aren't white. And that's something you can get mad about, you can get mad at, and you can just think that, well, those people only want to hear me because I'm a certain gender, or I have a certain skin color, or I am of a certain age. But I want to tell you that you should use that space and you should use your voice. And if you think, or if they think that they only want to hear you because you're a woman or because you're young, then show them that they are wrong. It is your time to take action, and it is your time, and I'm talking to all the young women here, to take leadership. Because without young women taking over the climate movement, we won't survive. And I strongly believe that we need more young women taking action, and it is our time to do that. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, that was so powerful. And I sometimes catch myself trying to avoid the topic of climate change just because of how painful it is to think about. But there really is no time for denial or avoidance. And it is time to start taking charge. And it is harder to do that when you're a minority or a woman and everything. So I think that definitely should be taken into consideration. So thank you for saying that. Our next speaker is Nick. Nick is 23 from Miami and has worked with Extinction Rebellion for the past 2 to 3 years. He has given up his studies, quit his job, and is currently on an 800-mile climate pilgrimage across Florida, and he's fully committed to the rebellion. Nick, take it away.
Cool. Thank you, Emma, and thank you to all the speakers and all the organizers. So I just kind of want to start off by saying that I'm not a very great communicator, not a great speaker, definitely not a climate scientist, and I may tend to speak incoherently at times, but you know, here I am. And so I want to tell you a little bit more about the situation that we're in, and maybe to kind of start off with the Arctic. And so right now, the Arctic is reaching its tipping point. And the world's leading polar scientist, Dr. Peter Wadhams, who has been studying what has been going on in the Arctic for decades, expects the Blue Ocean event, when the summer ice melts completely, to occur much sooner than anticipated, probably in the next year or two. The blue water will absorb more of the sun's heat, further warming our planet and the jet stream, which balances weather in the northern hemisphere and will be disrupted. This has profound cascading impacts over the Earth's climate systems and will result in drastic global warming effective immediately. And from another expert, the Professor James Anderson of Harvard University, who you may know as the guy who discovered the hole in the ozone layer, he envisions the Arctic ice to be gone by the early 2020s. He says the chance that there will be any permanent ice left in the Arctic after 2022 is essentially zero. He said this in June of 2019. So that's it. It's gone. We've essentially lost the Arctic. The air conditioning of our planet is falling apart before our very eyes. And so here's another bit of an inconvenient fact. So there's this thing called methane, which is trapped in the frozen permafrost in the Arctic, which scientists are calling a ticking time bomb or methane bomb. And there's been a lot of uncertainty about when the methane will be released from the permafrost as temperatures increase and the ice melts. But there have been some estimates of it going off sometime within the next couple of decades. And so the estimate is if just 1% of the methane is released, then it will increase temperatures by 0.5 degree or 1.4 degrees over 7 years. And just like that, it takes us right over the limit of keeping to 1.5 to 2 degrees centigrade. And so methane in the atmosphere has gone up exponentially since the 1800s, from 700 parts per billion to 1,800 parts per billion, nearly a 3-fold increase. And there has been fear that it will increase up to a tipping point, which most paleoscientists suggest is that this runaway release of methane is what triggered the previous mass extinction events. And so I want to take from a post, a recent Facebook post from Peter Carter. He's an expert IPCC reviewer, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, and director of the Climate Emergency Institute. This was just a few days ago. The Arctic methane bomb has blown. Methane is suddenly pouring from Siberian permafrost. You could be looking at the end of the world. You could be looking at the end of the world. He goes on to say, will our governments, fossil fuel corporations, banks, and science academies respond to this? No. Their agenda is to keep burning fossil fuels and geoengineer the planet when food production fails. This is their insane, definite world-ending strategy. Rebel for your family's survival. Dr. Peter Carter. So there you have it. A leading climate expert is essentially saying conventional approaches have failed us, the scientific community has failed us, and our world leaders had failed us, and rebellion is now necessary. Sending letters, petitioning, lobbying, writing words on a piece of fucking paper is not proportionate to the scale to what we're going to be facing with mass rape, mass suffering, mass death, and ultimately the extinction of our species. Words are useful for maybe promoting a cause, advertising, mobilizing, inspiring people, and perhaps even reaching to the core of people's hearts and minds, right? But without words backed up by actions, these words are useless, they're meaningless, or at least they lose their meaning and people stop caring and lose interest. If you're not completely outraged and moved to act by what is happening in the world, then I would suggest you don't fully understand or grasp what is happening, or you have not internalized it yet. It's incredibly painful to know that people are continuing to go on with their lives in the face of the greatest threat humanity has ever faced. But I say, who am I to judge? All I'm doing is being the person that I want to see in the world. And that's all that matters, that I am unwavering in my truth and who I truly am. And as far as this 800-mile pilgrimage goes, I have been to jail 5 times in 5 different cities across Florida, disrupting classrooms at university, disrupting malls and churches, stepped in front of traffic, blocking an entire roadway. essentially on my own. And in just the past few months, it has been the most stressful time of my life. And it's not jail or prison that I fear. It's simply putting myself out there in the public sphere. It truly kills me. But you know, I'm just doing what I'm doing right now is what freaks me out. Speaking and communicating to people and sharing this message. It's my ego that gets in the way, and that is so concerned about what people think about me. And it is freaking stressful. But this is what is required of us, to raise the public's awareness on this issue, to put ourselves out there and take to the streets. And from what I've experienced is that the more and more I put myself into uncomfortable situations, the more I'm able to deal with them with less and less friction. But still, it's been an incredibly difficult journey. And to be honest, I never really know if I've made the right decision on behalf of the common good. And so I tend to guilt trip myself sometimes. And it's that voice in my head that we all have telling me that I'm not good enough. Who do I think I am? I'm no, hero or whatever the hell. But I'm just so fed up with the way things are, so much so that I don't really have a choice. It's simply a matter of following your heart and acting from that place as an act of service to the world, to our children and our children's children. And I kind of have this idea that I could just work really, really hard and give it my all for the next couple months, and then I'll finally be able to rest. And when I end up in prison, I can meditate and as Gandhi did for himself, to just go inward and reduce myself to zero and empty myself to create that space and build, to be able to build that power. And I don't really care who follows me. I have my insecurities, I have my fears. I'm not much of a leader, I admit that, but the situation is so beyond fucked that I don't know what else to do. I don't know what else to do, and I'm scared shitless, as most of these young people here on this call have communicated to you all. We're scared as fuck, and I've thrown myself into this action that seems like this 800-mile pilgrimage that it seems like it's never ending, and it seems, and I've done it because it seems like the evil and injustice in this world will never end. So essentially, what I've signed up to do is commit full time to this resistance against radical evil until my very last breath. And you have no idea how many times the thought to just give up, just go home has crossed my mind. I get calls and texts from my mother, my father, my sister, my grandmother, telling me to stop this, saying things like what you're doing isn't working and it isn't going to work, and that I'm putting myself in harm's way, and for what? And I understand their concerns. They care deeply about my well-being, but it's ultimately my decision. It's your decision. It's not up to our friends, our families, their wife, husband, father, your bosses. No, you call the shots. But yes, my family, at this point, my family does seem to have accepted the path that I have chosen, at least partially, because I've shown courage. I've shown courage to keep going, no matter what people say. And so we have to take back control over the fate of our lives and be devoted to the truth, and by stepping into our power, no matter the consequences. And I would suggest that this is the way to do it. And for me, what makes it clear for me to know what it is I have to do, all that is needed is to wonder what kind of world will I be leaving for the young people in my life, my little cousins. I sometimes have to look at pictures of them to remind myself of the world that I will be leaving with them. So we have to confront our mortal nature. We have to look death in the eye and say, enough is enough. I'm not going to put up with this anymore. Evil, unconscious activity, good intentioned, well-meaning action by those in power, actions taken from a self-serving, egoic, separate self has got to come to an end. It has taken far too many lives and is now prepared to take itself with it. It's time to wake the fuck up. And the question is, what are we prepared to do at this time? Seriously. No one's listening. No one's paying attention. No one's going to come and fucking save us. And what we need is an act of God. We need a miracle. And life itself is a miracle. And to be honest, I don't care what happens. Whatever happens, happens. The fact that it's happening at all is the greatest miracle of all. So I say, fuck it. What have we got to lose? I'm going to march to the capital of my state and demand my right to fucking life. Me and my good friend and others will be going on an indefinite hunger strike, and we are totally prepared to go to prison and may end up in prison for a year or so by engaging in high-level civil disobedience against the Florida state government for its treasonous activities, for its crimes against humanity, because that's the risk we are willing to take in the face of the greatest injustice in human frickin' history. In human history, this is it. It's all or nothing. And I'm going all in. I'm willing to sacrifice my health, my financial security, my relationships with my friends and family, because everything is on the line. And I'm going to lose all of it when I'm dead anyways. So it's really no big deal. When I die, my world, Nick's little world will collapse. It's over. The life that I've lived is over. The memories that I had, they're gone. And as suddenly as I appeared into this world, into this universe, I will suddenly disappear. That is how it is, and that is how it's always been. It is the fate we all share. We are not immortal. We are mere flesh and bone that will soon one day disappear, and we have to face facts and act practically if we want to maximize the chance of maintaining this beautiful world that we were all brought into for the next generation and the next 1,000 generations. And in the face of extinction of our species and the rest of the natural world, seriously, prison is no big fucking deal, especially in the rich Western societies where we have these good conditions and relatively good freedoms. Refusing to eat for a few days is no big deal. The fucking big deal is the world is going to shit and we're facing hell on earth and no one seems to give a damn and act proportionately to this massive, massive catastrophe. I don't really have a choice. And at this point, at this time in human history, it is whatever my conscience dictates me to do. So there you have it. I don't give a fuck anymore. As you can see, I'm doing whatever it takes. And in prophetic action, I'm going to continue no matter the consequences on behalf of the common good and the rest of the natural world. And, you know, it's time to fight like hell. It's time. This pilgrimage, in a way, is a rite of passage. I am showing grit, and I'm showing that I'm determined to do whatever it takes and put my body on the line, and joining with the rest of the youth that are doing the same across the world. So thank you.
Thank you, Nick. I'm sorry, mate. I won't have it that you say that you speak incoherently. You speak from the heart, and what else fucking matters, isn't it? It's been an absolute honor to put this together with you. Even though you're just pixels on the screen, I can fucking sense the love, brother, and that's all that matters, isn't it? All right. So for our last speaker, we have Sergio from Australia. Sergio, are you here? No, he's not here. Sorry, guys. Sorry to disappoint. He has submitted something to show to you guys, but Sergio is an activist from Australia. You might have seen him at the start doing his treason walk, but he is currently, forgive me for my Australian geography, but I believe he's engaging in blockades in Sydney at the moment with the intention of getting arrested. You'll see his lovely face in a couple of minutes. I'll just read out his biography now. So Sergio, as a 15-year-old, pledged his life service to prolonging the existence of consciousness in the universe, which was and is at an existential, immediate, and complete threat of annihilation within his lifetime. In the pursuit of survival, Sergio was accepted by the highest-ranking university for his field of nanoscience. However, Sergio immediately found himself balancing study and activism, starting from university fossil fuel divestment campaigns to organizing a blockade of the world's largest coal port. Sergio entered the rebellion and was propelled into the limelight as his team entered into non-violent conflict with the Australian government. Since then, he has been arrested 22 times and been in prison twice. Sergio has embarked on one of the most ambitious plans in the world. He is also a leader of a youth activist group who actually a few of the, I believe maybe all of the speakers on this call are members of, called Last Generation. It's cross-border, the members are from all over the world. I will post, if you want to hear more about it, I will post contact details and some upcoming actions onto the chat while Sergio's talk's playing. Last Generation will use the civil resistance model to force treason out of all governments and replace inept governments with citizens' assemblies, an important buzzword. This is an attempt for the youth whom the collapse of our systems most affects to stand up to their oppressors, the decision makers, and the inaction of the climate movement. So we're just going to see a little video of Sergio explaining some concrete and I'd say foolproof strategies of how to conduct civil disobedience. Thank you. Sorry, John, it's just on mute, I believe.
You have to unmute yourself, whoever's sharing the screen.
My name's Sergio, 22, and let's get into the details. I want to talk about strategy. I'm sure all my friends have told you why it's your duty to now take control of our destiny, and yeah, through the use of non-violent civil disobedience, also known as the civil resistance model. So I'm just going to explain to you what I've sort of written up here, okay? And how I'm going to sort of give you a bit of a landscape of, you know, where we're at, where we're going to be, and what some of those details are. This is based on the civil resistance model and some of Roger Hallam's research. I should probably preface this with, you know, the three key elements of non-violent civil disobedience that are, you know, crucial. So first of all, disruption. Disruption is how you get into people's minds. It's how you push the conversation forward. It's how you create, you know, a billion conversations about how we're going to move to a new future together that isn't murdering us around the world. It's how you get international news, and it's also how you facilitate number two, which is sacrifice. So sacrifice means, you know, instead of just putting, you know, holding a sign outside, you know, whatever, some office or government building or whatever it is, saying, you know, down with the regime or whatever in this case, you know, stop murdering us, please. Instead of standing there on the footpath where you get whatever you can talk to people. You need to stand in the road, you need to block the traffic, and you need to actively engage in disruption to the point of sacrifice, which might mean if what you're talking about is particularly unpopular, it might mean getting beaten up by the average Joe, or if your belief or your thing is severely against the law, it might mean facing legal consequences, like obviously getting arrested, going to jail, and that kind of stuff, as it is in Australia. There's lots of places in the Western world where this work is most crucial in terms of removing the systems of exploitation that exist. And the third key element is respect and love, that sort of thing. It's about basically giving your opponent a chance to back down, right? So instead of saying, come out here, so and so, and put your head on this chopping block, we're going to take it off, you let them say that. Right? So civil disobedience is an act of civil disobedience is you make the cost of ignoring you quite high, so that's the disruption. So that's why you do the disruption, you increase in the cost of ignoring you. Obviously, the longer you stay, the more costly it is. The system, if you're blocking something, for example, or doing something that the government deems unacceptable. And obviously, in this scenario, there's like maybe a small number of people, or what you're doing is extremely disruptive, in which case repression has cost, obviously, but they have to choose repression because they can't let you continue, and it's not enough to negotiate. That's the main thing. It's not enough to negotiate. So you will receive this, and this is how you do non-violence in a sort of acts of non-violence, and this is how you build your movements through small acts of these, showing people, that you're willing to cause disruption to the people in power and suffer for it, and calling people to join in to increase the cost of this repression. And obviously, the more people can join in and attack this, maybe you can split up, and maybe if it's a blockade or if it's something like that, you might be interested in blocking more sections, more areas of critical infrastructure, in which case you're moving up your action, the cost of the disruption being, I guess, attacked in a little bit, or you must be drawing out the implicit violence of the state onto you to mobilize people to join you through the backfiring effect. The two keywords here. Think about proximity in your own time. It's an important one, but the backfire effect is basically when it is basically what you're trying to create through your non-violent work, which is that it is unacceptable. You're trying to develop a notion that it is unacceptable to continue to treat these people that have somewhat reasonable demands in this way, right? And you want that way to be as extreme as possible, because the more outrageous it is in that moment of outrage, people will join you, and their fear will be gone for at least the 2 to 4 weeks it will take to blockade the 4 main motorways of the country and get to the negotiation. Actually, I'm just going to mention quickly is the momentum-driven organizing framework, I guess. And what that is suggesting is, well, what I would suggest that means, well, that does for us is, so what we're trying to do is create hype, drama around what we're doing, defying the odds, and making it sort of cool for, a bit 3 to 6 months is the average length of a successful campaign. So we want to be doing these actions where we're going to go somewhere we're really not allowed, and we're definitely going to get hurt for it. And by hurt, I'm using a sort of general term, the vision of her, like loss of liberty by giving a peace out in a few hours and things, or going to prison. So we want to repeat these every week. If you're not doing it every week, you're not the talk of the town, you might as well fuck off, basically. So yeah, I just like to shout myself out. I don't know. Anyway, I'm going to get arrested tomorrow. And I'm going to most likely end up in prison for a while. I don't know how long yet. I'm going to go on a hunger strike, and yeah, and the idea behind that is, well, to mobilize a movement, right, to inspire a nation, in order to get over 100 people to go to prison with me later on in the year. And there's about, we have about almost 20 people coming to prison with us as a big collective here in the capital city of Australia, in Canberra. And we're using a really simple tactic that basically says, you know, do what you want to us, and we'll accept it, but we believe it's right. We enforce the law of the land, which is that genocide is not acceptable, and we're forcing the person that makes the decision about prison, which is the magistrate, to choose between imprisonment or letting us go. And we have a little way that we can do that. It's available, it's viable in the state, by the way. So if you're listening to this in the state, I believe your system has a similar loophole that you can use. So, you know, yeah, fine. Cool. Well, off you go then, out into the street.
Great, thank you. Even though Sergio wasn't able to be here, his message is still very important, and we want to thank him for taking the time to make that informative video, and thank you, JLo, for sharing that, and thank you, John, for editing it and everything. Now we have a special guest, Disraeli. He's a poet, producer, fire starter, songwriter, MC, multi-instrumentalist, raconteur. He is in a genre of his own, and he has explored the crossover between hip hop, folk, bass music, and everything in between. His unswerving devotion to pushing the boundaries of lyricism and musical form has earned him a bona fide cult status among those who know, and the raw honesty and humor he brings to his writings on his own mental health, sexuality, and the liberation of the human spirit has drawn people of all shades and ages together. So thank you so much for being here. Take it away.
Thank you, Emma. I just want to check that people can hear me okay, because I've got a really bad connection where I am. Does it seem all right?
Yes.
Okay, that is great news. Okay, so I'm sitting in my car just by where I've been doing a gig in Nottingham. So I'm in the streets of Nottingham right now, and I've been playing in an arboretum with a singer called Beans on Toast, and we wrote a song together, which was inspired by The Overstory by Richard Powers. Anyone here read that? Overstory. I can't see most people. I can see I can see icons and names. There are a wall of emojis to me, but I will I'll keep going anyway. So yeah, I thought as I've just been sharing that, I'd share that with you lovelies first, just because of it being a sort of part of, I hope, a movement of culture makers who are repositioning the human as part of an ecosystem rather than as a kind of as a sole inhabitant of a planet where all the other beings are just furniture for our use and abuse. So this is my attempt at. Should have had this ready. Sorry, I've literally just come from the gig. This is my excuse. Let me try and just remember it. I come back and back to you, tree by the cataract, where the black ice cold river splash and the moss gathers its thoughts most moistly. Flies swerve as I lay my anorak. Then I place my sitting bones, unclench and sigh. Release where the river rat went to die. One of these days will I, at the end of my labored life, sat scribbling vague outlines, oak and cedar. See me for a second, down here in your black luminescence. I can sense your sap in my vessels right now. My substrata crackle in your presence, mycelium lines. I am the bloody scene of a crime, while you am without seeming to try. Let me lie back truthful, my spine on your girt trunk, your dirt dug up in my cuticles. Juice me clean in the turning of seasons, pump humus up in my noodle. Ah, I am ooze, yo, I let loose the nothings I know. It soothes me, I am suddenly home. I am ooze, you are oozing in my muscles and bones. You are oozing in my muscles and bones. Anyway, that's that's all I can remember of that one. This one's for my dad, who is a lifelong climate activist and and still somehow after a life of banging his head against the wall with this work. I'm letting Dan into the waiting room because it seems that I'm the host now. So this one's dedicated to my dad and his optimism that can seem blind but is always nutrition to me. Running in the morning light, trying to catch a falling tide. Running in the morning light, pressure out the window. Running in the morning light, trying to catch a seed of time. Running in the morning light, pressure. Look, I'm not particularly deadly, though I carry arms. Though I carry arms, I'm not afraid to use. Being I'm a doer, I'd be doing balls deep, clambering the cliffs in a scruffy set of shoes. So don't invite me to your poncy little dinner, though I am pretty handy with your codes. Stick me in the cellar with the swingers, that you're more my scene, come strip me of my clothes, because I can hold a pose for minutes, even hours. But eventually something sours. Something flings itself around in me, yelling, now it's time to frickin' wriggle out your trousers, pulling people out their pouches, running in the morning light. The marshland couldn't give a frig for me. It is a space out of history. Bury my visage in its mud holes. And when the day rises, I have struck gold. Geese fly in celebration. That's my church. I prefer the wind over any kind of audience. When I chat my verse, I launch my soul. People say there's madness in the heat of my performance, maybe so. Maybe there'll be sorrow on my death stone. Maybe I'll be geriatric nutter bombing Tesco. At least I'll have been honest from the get-go. I'm honestly the opposite of London, running in the morning light, trying to catch a falling tide, running in the morning light, pressure out the window, running in the morning light, trying to catch a seed of time, running in the morning light, pressure. Look, Daddy was a preacher man. He spoke the Holy Ghost at peace protests. We reclaim the streets together, sweet Moses, part the asphalt. Tell it like a town crier, light the fuse. Don't ever televise the news. All he taught me, he born in 1940s, proves that he had to fight to find. Me born in Thatcherite decline, same appetite for life. I learned sanity from Catcher in the Rye. Now the stamina is mine. The wild animus, the caravan standing in the vines. The grizzly bear is mine. The piston and the steam, forever back in Bristol in my dreams. And the world is often ending in them, and that is often cause for joy. I'm back in adolescence in a wall of noise, banging a snare drum, clocking how they're murdering us slow. Dad, come, we've got further to go. Running in the morning light, trying to catch a falling tide. Running in the morning light, pressure out the window. Running in the morning light, trying to catch a seed of time. Running in the morning light, pressure. And maybe have I got time to share a last one?
Of course you have, Days. Always, always, always.
My dear emojis. My lovely wall of names. Are the names there? Are you real people? Are you really there? Can we see your faces? Even though we're on Zoom.
Yes.
Hey, lovelies. It's good to see you. Hey, here we are together. Look at this. Look at this, you miracles. All right. So I come from a town called in the southwest of the UK called Bristol, and you might have heard about Bristol last year when my fellow citizens toppled a statue of Colston, who was a slave owner. And I wasn't living in Bristol at the time. I was over in London, and I moved back to Bristol shortly after, and I wrote a piece for the people that toppled the statue of Colston. This is my attempt at a contribution to that, and the sense of hope that it gave me, the sense of forward movement at least that gave me. So I'm going to do this one, and then if I can slip in a little 1 minute at the end, which is purely exile and purely for you guys, that would be golden. I'm going to do them back to back like this. By a muddy river in a murky town, I sit in silence, see birds circle round. I see a gull upon the rooftop without wings. I watch it edge into the edge in mad winds. It's the mirror for within, in a new chapter, in a whipping storm, in a cyclone of food wrappers. A kid is born. Now it's a trace of green. Now it's a taste of something strange and sweet. It doesn't heal, but it makes some peace. It puts a smile on the face of freaks, and it releases from the closet them afraid to breathe. Now we're wading in an army up against a stream, because we have seen that there is insufficient day to dream. 1 minute Sonny's deep up in the make-believe. Next minute Mummy's kneeling at his grave to grieve. Too cruel. We are cruel and we're angels. We kill life and give life with a movement of the arms. Chase dragons in the crucible of St. Paul's. We topple statues in a revolutionary dance by a muddy river, and we chuck him in. My kids will not grow up looking up at him. My kids will not grow up in the ways I did, watching white mates morphing into racist pricks. Never, never. The muddy river raising up. I raise a rhythm and a bass line in praise of us. I raise my kids in a toast to the courageous ones who kill the devil with 100 million paper cuts, singing a change will come in the course of all this craziness. I see my mates parade like they were made for this. And they grew up facing shits that I never face. Still they're turning up the temperature for better days. Still they're turning up and tracing out the blueprints for new ways and new architecture, new movements, for new phases. And you could celebrate the dawn instead of panicking and sellotaping doors shut. Instead of gazing gormless at the gold framed stories of the slave-made empire that decorate your walls. Look, we celebrate the dawn. We break them ornaments. We work making structures that we've never made before. I see my children standing with us at this river. So I'll work until the water comes and elevates us all. I'm planting seeds at the end of the world. Listen, I'm making futures at the end of the world. Look, I'm raising babies at the end of the world. I'm lighting fires at the end of the world. Listen, I'm planting seeds at the end of the world. Listen, I'm making futures at the end of the world. I'm raising babies at the end of the world. So much fire at the end of the world. So much fire. People ask me why I'm there. Often ask me why I'm there when I'm at a protest or causing an obstruction, why I'm causing an inconvenience to their day. So I wrote a piece that is a response to that. I am here for the smell of plums, the smell of leaves, the smell of polished trombones. I am here for the smell of home. I am here for home. I remember when I looked outside and calmly picked my nose and thought of all the places we would go. So I'm here for the smell of plums. I am among the desperate ones. I'm here for the taste of garlic, the bass, the drums, the curve of your neck. I'm here for the feel of feet in sand, for the smell of sex. I'm here for Billy's baby, Dan's baby, Dexter, Salome. I'm here for Nina. I'm here for Nina and I cannot break. I'm here for you. I'm definitely here for me. I wake and I can't go back to sleep. My tongue is covered in seeds, and I will do whatever this needs. May I be summarized by the sum of my deeds. I cannot sleep, and I will do whatever Nina needs. You can take my MacBook Pro. You can take my Actimel. You can take my Skyborn buses and my shining teeth. You can take my Whatsits and my NCP, my extras, my Uber, you can take my hair gel, my styling clay, my holiday, my contact-free card, my hologram sticker of a Kenyan giraffe, my watch winking in the dark. Take my arty abstractions, take my WhatsApp appliance, my ease of access, my pocket full of bloody science, my whirly gigabytes of GPS. Leave Eminem circling his car park yelling, I am here for the smell of rain. Take my cellophane, my sellotape, my melatonin. I want to go home with a future. I want to go home to a future. I want to lie down tonight with a future in me. because I wake and I cannot sleep. I wake up and I cannot sleep. I've woken and I can't sleep, and I will do whatever this needs. I'm sensing a strength here. I'm sensing a strength. I'm sensing a strength here. I'm sensing a strength. I'm sensing a strength here. I'm sensing a strength. I am sensing a strength here. Thank you, lovelies.
Thank you, Des, and yeah, thank you for coming in on such short notice to do this. I know me myself in the UK, and I absolutely rate your energy, and I know amazingly to see that the young people in America also do like back you too, and also absolutely vibe off you. So yeah, no, really thank you, and bringing this, bringing your performances to this space. Really appreciate it. Yeah, we've just got some last minute speakers coming in. Eben and Loz from a campaign called Insulate Britain in the UK, who are going to be making some concrete demands on the UK government very shortly. But yeah, I guess the less said from me, the better, and I'll hand over to Eben and Loz.
Hi everyone. It's hard to know what to say after hearing all of the incredible, beautiful and heartbreaking testimonies of you beautiful people. I speak to you from Brighton as a climate activist for about 3 years, and I'll try and keep this brief. There is a campaign happening this autumn, this fall in the UK of mass civil disobedience. It has a Gandhian style demand. It's a simple and easy demand about insulating social houses that will majorly decrease UK CO2 emissions. It's a campaign that has been put forward by Roger Hallam. He's put huge amounts of work behind it. This week alone, he's done like 8 or 9 talks in 6 days. He's just constantly going around this country empowering people. I am part of the youth mobilization side of this campaign. I'm not going to go into the details of what the action is, but the aim is to go on remand and be imprisoned. There's currently over 120 people who have signed up to take this action and to go on remand. We're trying to get to over 200, ideally 300 people. It would make history. This year, COP26 being held in the UK, the world spotlight for climate action is on this country, and Boris Johnson, as we all know, is woefully inadequate for the job, and we have to highlight that. And that is why we're taking this action in autumn, just before COP26. Hopefully 300 climate activists in prison. How shit does that look for a government that's supposedly leading the way with action on climate change? They've just imprisoned 300 climate activists for the first time in UK history. So yeah, we need the youth for this. It's so much stronger when it comes from the youth. We're the future. As much as adults will deny us and try and invalidate our opinions and our views, they know that we come next and we are the future. So to see us taking this form of action is more powerful than watching anyone else do it. So this is just a call out for any youth in the UK. If you can take part in this action, please do. And if you can't, just share this link that we've just sent to the chat around. We're having a national youth call next Sunday. Yeah, if you have any other questions, feel free to send them. Not sure where right now.
Yeah, is there an email that you can I don't know if you can post it in the chat to everyone. Is there an email that you can send to one of the hosts that we can then place in the chat?
Yes.
They want to find out more about the campaign.
Yeah, sure thing. I think I'm just trying to avoid sending my personal email right now with the new bill coming through. That's 10 years later. But I will try and find an email to send right now.
Fab. So yeah, thank you very much, Eben and Loz. I'll just post that. If you want to find out more about the Insulate Britain campaign, and especially the youth side of the campaign, I will just be posting that in the chat shortly. We'll just I know a few of you have been sending questions in, about the speakers and about the event and everything else. So we'll just take a couple of those before wrapping up. Thank you all for coming. Jada?
All right, great. So John's going to ask the questions, and then we'll have to have our panel raise their hand to answer them, or we can just have the panel open up their mics and unmute themselves and then sort of raise their hand to answer, and John will pick someone.
I'll ask this to everyone on the panel, and whoever wants to respond can. How do you keep your spirits up when you reach out to other young people and they don't respond as quickly and as well as you would like to? How do you keep sort of moving forward despite this? Nick? Yeah? Orla?
All right, I guess I'll give it a shot.
Yes, Nick.
Okay, cool. Keep my spirits up. Yeah, it's not the end of the world, right? Or maybe it is. But yeah, there's always going to be there's always going to be pushback. People are going to ignore you, insult you. People are going to make fun of you. All along this journey, I mean, I'm walking through, a red state, very conservative, climate denier state, and I get all sorts of kind of insults aimed at me. So you just keep going. You keep going because you know that you're in the right, and you're devoted to truth and the greater good, the common good, and it's just that service you're doing a service for the common good, and it doesn't matter who follows you. You just keep going no matter what, and you say to yourself, I'm going to be that person that I want to see in this world, whatever it takes. And what you're doing is you're setting an example for people to do exactly that. And there are going to be those people that are going to be inspired by your actions. It might be a handful of people, but you want to keep those people close to you, and those people can kind of provide support for you, moral support, and definitely a support system is helpful. Yeah, maybe give it to Yad.
Thank you, Nick. Yad, you had your hand up?
Yeah, that's exactly the thing that Nick said at the end. You just find those people who answer, and you just keep in touch with them. When we first met with Sergio, Zach, Ola, I believe in the first meeting we said that we are meeting each other to not get mad, and to sometimes just feel like there are other people who think the same way and who are doing the same things. So instead of focusing on how many people there are who are doing nothing, you just find those who are doing and who will do it with you, and that's what keeps you going.
Thank you. We have another question from, I hope I'm pronouncing the name right, from Luban in Nigeria. And the question is, how can we open up this conversation and bring this to Nigeria?
Zach, go for it.
Hi. Obviously, I, can't tell you about the cultural context of your region or the political context. But often what you find is that people involved in radical movements, regardless whether it's climate or it's about ending police brutality or it's about, campaigning for fair wages, if you can find other radical people, other people who are actually taking action and talk to them about it, you can come together and you can help them on their campaigns. And likewise, they'll be able to help you on your campaigns. Because we're not going to get anywhere if we don't have some sort of intersectional understanding of how all of our political movements sort of align with each other. So yeah, I can't tell you about, Nigeria specifically, but my advice would be to find, if you're struggling on the climate issue, find people who are campaigning to end SARS, for example.
The next question I think is addressed to you, Zach, and that is, if we lose the Iceland ice caves and the Arctic, what will happen next?
Oh, can I quickly respond to that last question?
Sure, I'm sorry.
Oh, no worries. Yeah, so in Extinction Rebellion, Sergio spoke about this in the video, but we're following the civil resistance model, right? And largely taken from the global South, as the global South, South resistance model. When a government is failing to act to protect its people, it's up to the people to rebel against it. When it is committing crimes against humanity, against essentially it's mass genocide against all people, we have a right and a duty to stand up for what we believe in. And I just wanted to say I'm totally willing to die for this cause, because it's all hell's going to break loose. It's so wherever you are on this beautiful planet, that's your call for revolution at this time. Yeah.
Thank you. I didn't mean to miss you. It's hard for me to track everybody on the screen. I want to go back to Zach about the question about assuming that there is the loss of ice in the Arctic. What will happen next? What's the scientific predictions, if we know?
I will start off with a disclaimer in that I am, not an expert in this area, but I am aware that in terms of the Greenland ice sheet, there's currently fears that it will cross the threshold where all of the ice will melt, and that will be inevitable. And if all of the Greenland ice sheet did melt, that would result in global sea level rise of 7 meters. That's how much ice there is. But yeah, aside from that, I don't know the details, and I'd probably maybe ask Nick to share the names of the scientists that he referred to earlier, the Arctic ice specialists.
We have an anonymous question. Are there any tips on how to speak to our peers, other young people? What is it that those of you who are activists do and say to try to get them involved? Iban.
In my experience, it's just speak from the heart. Always just spoken from the heart, and I think that's what I felt tonight. You can reel off as many statistics and science as you like, but words are useless to describe what we're going through right now. It's not words that have forced us to act. It's what's inside for me. It's that raw emotion that flows into someone else, regardless of the words coming out of your mouth. So speak from the heart and you'll get through.
Thank you. Anyone else? I'll go to our Martha from Austria.
Yes, I want to ask about how to deal with the sheer incompetence in the leadership of mass movements such as Fridays for Future. Because after more than 2 years of holding marches and talking to politicians with zero effect whatsoever, they're still misleading young people into making them believe this is the way to go. They're sapping their energy and pouring it into nothing, into organizing the 8th march of the 7 marches that have failed, into still talking with politicians that won't listen. So how to deal with such an incompetent leadership that's crippling the movement?
Nick?
Tell them to join Last Generation. That is, engaging in, nonviolent civil disobedience. And it's a youth-led movement. And, tell them, inspire others to, get their asses on the streets and fight for their lives. I mean, yeah, that's an option.
But also you can always just decentralize it. Like in Poland, where I live, we actually have a lot of leaders, young leaders, who are from Fridays for Future, because there are just young people who, that's the most well-known movement in Poland, climate movement. So they call themselves Fridays for Future, but then they are taking leadership, especially in smaller towns. So I think that it depends on the country, and if you just give young people space to do what they feel like they want to do and what is right, then they will take over leadership. And you don't need this leadership to be centralized. Like you don't need to have all the pressure on Greta. You can trust that there are people in your country to do the work.
Let me allow Raphael to speak.
Thank you very much. I'm so happy to be here. I'm Raphael from Nigeria, and I want to ask the question because, after the pandemic or still in the pandemic, we suffer a lot more here from Nigeria, and a lot more insecurity and crisis here currently going on, and advocating and advocacy is being done, but still based on societal perception and individual perception. Maybe more of this orientation is not being effective. So I don't know, I'm looking at a question how we could or how can we influence policies that could aid this climate education in either maybe from the education sector. That could be another effective way where we could reach out to especially to the individuals in mass. Thank you. I don't know. So I just want to ask, how can we influence these policies in our own countries for us to have effective solutions to this problem? Thank you.
Any responses? Zach? Is there a one solution for all countries, or should it be different?
Again, I'm not sure. I'm only answering because nobody else has. My personal, I suppose, opinion or understanding is that those in power will only give concessions if they're forced to give them up, right? And that's why we engage in civil disobedience. It's to force these things to happen. Sort of like Orla said, we're not going to get it by emailing or by petitioning. You know, we have to get out onto the streets. And unfortunately, you know, history shows that putting yourself on the line, putting yourself in harm's way is the way to affect change, for all the reasons that Sergio outlined. So yeah, I'm not sure if that's a great answer to your question, but that's my kind of 2 cents on it.
I have one final question. It's sort of a science-oriented. Can someone discuss the problem of we're increasing food production and distributing food in a more technical way, but with the growing population and with climate problems, more people are going hungry? Steve from North Carolina has asked this. How do we address this problem as part of a climate collapse?
Zach, I see you itching to talk about food insecurity. I can see it on the tip of your tongue.
Okay, I can also talk about this a lot. I suppose from like a a purely scientific perspective, globally, we need to cut out animal agriculture wherever possible. Obviously, that is not possible for some communities, especially in very food insecure regions. But speaking for myself as, a white Irish middle class person, with a lot of, a lot of people in Ireland are very food secure, but Ireland has the highest methane emissions in Europe, and that's because of dairy, right? And because of beef. And ultimately, we do need to shift away from animal agriculture as a model for feeding the world. A more plant-based diet does have about a quarter of the land footprint of a meat-rich one. And again, this depends on your, cultural context, and it depends on where you are. But that is one significant factor.
Thank you, Zach. I'm going to turn it back over now to Rodri and Emma so they can do our closing.
Yeah, well, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, and everyone in between. It's been fantastic. Covered lots of ground, but I'd just like to say that, you've heard the speakers talk the talk, and they've also walked the walk, as you saw, right in front of your eyes with the videos. But I'm just going to post a survey in the chat that's been posted throughout the talk. There's just 5 short questions on there, basically saying who you are, where you're from, how fucked do you think the situation is. I hope you click the right answer, and we'll just be able to gather that data in an efficient way, and basically be able to get back to you and point you in the right direction about essentially if you want to engage in civil disobedience in your respective areas. We've got Europe, we've got Australia, we've got America covered in this call, but I know we can cover South America, we can cover Africa with people outside of this call. But yeah, I do urge you. It's just 5 short questions. It'll only take 30 seconds, but it'll be really important data, and we can just make this the start and not the end. Thank you very much. We'll just send it over to Emma just to wrap the whole thing up.
Yeah, I couldn't have said it better myself, Rodri. Thank you. But thank you everyone for being here, and I hope that you guys stay involved, because this is obviously a very pressing and important topic, and it's good to have these conversations every once in a while and hear from young people and just get inspired and get the ball rolling, because it's way past time. So Thank you. Fill out the survey in the chat like Rodri said, and I think that would be it. Thank you to all of our speakers as well. Really appreciate it.
Bye.
The Australian government is guilty of crimes against humanity. This is treason, and it's time that our government steps down from their podium and steps into the courtroom to be put on trial for treason against our generation and the next 1,000 generations.
For more than 40 years, enough is enough. What Orla's been saying is that Simon Coveney, who's the Minister for Foreign Affairs, has said that we have a duty to protect the women, the most vulnerable, and the least developed countries. For more than 40 years, we've had failed promises, we've had 25 COPs, and all we've got from it is a non-binding Paris Agreement that has been completely ignored. Every single year, 200 Indigenous land protectors are murdered.
Year we see our emissions grow, and this is going to result in hundreds of millions, potentially billions of people being displaced from their homes and starving to death. The Oxford Martin School knows this. The Oxford Martin School's job is to research humanity's most pressing issues, right? They know that without changing our food system, we will not meet the Paris Agreement's targets. They know that civil resistance and non-violent direct action is the most effective way to rapidly transform a society.
The climate crisis is here, and millions of Americans are going to starve to death. The West Coast is on fucking fire. The East Side is underwater. It is here, and it is now. Our government has betrayed my generation and is now sending us to our deaths by failing to act. There is no greater crime. I have been ignored, I've been ridiculed, I've been arrested again and again for simply warning my generation of the climate hell that we are facing. I've stood my ground and I continue to march on. I am putting my body on the line and I am standing up for what I believe in. I am demanding Governor DeSantis face up to the truth and declare a statewide climate and ecological emergency. On August 10th, we will march against the treasonous activities of the state and take to the streets from Jacksonville to Tallahassee. Join me.
There's more to do. There's more to love with you.
Na bunt. I oczywiście symbol Extinction Rebellion klepsydra. Policjanci nieco odsunęli od barierek, czy wmieszali.
500 scholars have warned about societal collapse. 1,600 scientists have stated the need for non-violent direct action. This is non-violent direct action.
And the government is guilty of treason. It is up to the people to pack a bag and head to the capital city, where our children are being sentenced to death. Come and join the treason march.